My name is Catherine Msakali, and I'm the chair of the Women on Boards Network. And I'm really honored and privileged to have you here with us this evening to attend our very, very first mentoring session this year. Last year, we had quite a number of sessions, a number of webinars. And this year you spoke, and you spoke loudly, and the board heard you. And you spoke about mentorship and the need for mentorship amongst ourselves and also with business leaders, people you look up to, people you admire. You want to hear from those people. And so we decided this year that we were going to put together a mentorship program for you. And to start us off, we will start off with this seminar, with this webinar today. And John, who I will be introducing very, very shortly, will speak to you about how can you position yourself for board leadership. What are those things that people will not tell you, but only John will tell you about board leadership and finding that coveted board position? How do you find it? And we use the word coveted. And sometimes that word is misleading because there are so many pitfalls and bear traps in board leadership, and you need to be aware of them. We will then follow up with a number of other mentorship sessions. Some of them will be one-on-one with those ladies of the network who will express interest. Some of them will be group mentorship sessions, but we will be coming back to you with details about how we are going to run those mentorship sessions. So for those of you who are not our members, the Women on Boards Network was set up way back in 2014. And it is just about promoting and championing gender diversity on boards. And the network provides a platform that brings together women from diverse fields and ranks to create a pipeline of board-ready women and facilitate those who are already sitting on boards to carry out their roles and responsibilities effectively as board members. So to lead us through the first mentorship session for 2021, I am honored and privileged, I don't know whether those two words go together, to have and to introduce to you Mr. John Ngumi, who, first and foremost, let me just say this. If there is a champion for Women on Boards Network, it is one Mr. Ngumi. If there is a champion for women to sit on boards and to make a difference, it is one Mr. John Ngumi. You may not know it, but we have gotten many, many ladies appointed into board leadership positions, both as chairpersons and as board members, through the introduction of Mr. Ngumi. There are so many women I can count in 2020 who only got their appointments because Mr. Ngumi said, give this person a chance. And so I'm so honored to bring to you Mr. Ngumi today. John is the chairman of the board of ICDC. That is his latest position. And in that position, we call him the super chairman, because all his board members are chairpersons of other state corporations. So we call him the super chairperson. John is an accomplished banker. He is actually East Africa's foremost corporate and investment banker with over 35 years experience, and his client base spans local, international, global corporate, state-owned entities, sovereigns, financial service groups, amongst others. He is a board member sitting on very, very many boards. He has advised governments, he has advised corporate entities on board leadership, and therefore it is my honor to that John accepted to speak on this topic of personal positioning for board leadership. The way the session will run is I will invite John to make his opening remarks for about 10-15 minutes. And because it is a mentorship session, we will then open it up for any questions, any comments, anything that you would like to be mentored on in terms of board leadership. So John, over to you. Karibu sana again to Women on Boards. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. This is my third time here. I feel bullied by you in addressing this gathering, but I will address this gathering. I note, by the way, first and foremost, that in the flyer, I set you a trick to come up with my title, and you came up with chairman, which is already indicative of your acceptance that only men can chair. My actual title is chairperson. That's what's on my letter, because the Kenya government is determined to ensure that that title will be gender neutral, and give a and thereby giving a message that it's not confined to men alone. Addressing this gathering, I really thought through these last few days what I will say. And what I decided to do is to give you a snapshot of what I have done on boards, to tell you how I have got onto those boards, to give you some hints. Tell you how you could get yourself on the boards, and in that process, differentiating between public and private sector boards, give you some hints how you could stay on boards and hopefully rise to chair. And then I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you have. And I have decided that I spoke to Catherine, and I decided that I would leave the greater part of the hour to that interactive session. So let me start. Formally, I've been on boards since I was aged 28. And that was the public sector board, Chairman Sugar. That was easy to position myself because I was ordered by my then employer, Greenlist Bank, to be on the board. Since then, I have been on 6 public sector boards, on 7 private sector boards, on 3 social educational boards, and on various boards of my own private companies. So, and I would say that it's really in the last 6 years that I have, how can I put it, almost become a professional chairman. I sit with Catherine on the board of Kenya Airways. We are where she's been company secretary for a long time, and I also sit with Catherine in a club of women chairs, which I will talk about in a moment. So that's a pretty long career in being a board member, spanning all the way back to 1983-84. And you may ask, other than that first one, how did you get onto those boards? But let me start first by giving some pretty key differences between public and private sector boards, because one of the questions you must ask yourself is, do you really want to be on this board? Why do you want to be on a board? Even before you position yourself, do you want to be on a public sector board, on a private sector board, on a listed company board? Why exactly what exactly are your reasons? My experience in boards, public sector boards are very interesting animals. They are basically, and you must be prepared to accept this, you essentially have responsibility without power. By that, I mean, and I know Catherine is smiling at this because she's an author of the code of, or the governance code for state-owned enterprises, known as Umongozo. But really, you're meant to oversight and to set strategy and oversight. You remain overall accountable, but the normal work of a board in a private company is definitely not yours. There are a lot of individuals and organizations who have power over your corporation, and while to the public eye and to the law, the board is responsible and accountable for the performance of the company. In reality, there are a lot of people, a lot of organizations, oversight organizations like Parliament and the State Corporation Advisory Committee and others, and then investigatory organizations like the DCI and the EACC, plus other organizations or other branches of the government like the legislature and the various committees, who all have various forms of power over the way the corporation is run. So if you want to join a public sector board, please be aware that you're joining a board where not all is as it seems to be. And it is actually incumbent upon you to understand how public sector boards work and how formal and informal power linkages operate. Indeed, the Boys Club, spelling BUOYS, to indicate a platform, has been formed by various lady chairs of public sector parastatals organizations, in order to help each other and help other board chairs and board directors coming in, the female board chairs and directors, to understand the nuances of how public sector boards work. You may wonder why I know about it. It's because, having been instrumental in bringing in quite a few ladies onto public sector boards, and having listened to their tales of war after they had been on those boards, it occurred to me and to a few others that there was need to help you, to mentor, which is also part of the topic today. I happen to be the only male member, so I'm known as an honorary woman in that particular 10, 12 person committee, informal committee. Private sector boards are probably things that you are familiar with. They are rational. They are responsible for the same thing as as public sector boards, oversight, strategy, but they also delve very much more so into the activities of the corporation and of the company in question. Especially if you're dealing with a listed company, there are far more responsibilities and expectations of board members. So they're more rational in the sense that if the company's objective is to make X in Y fashion and to come up with Z results, that is what you will be judged by, not by the more fluid metrics that pertain in the public sector. Right. Having done a very, very quick review of where I have been on boards, let me make some observations. Number one, it's only in the last 15 years that I've seen more, that I've actually seen women on boards. In my earlier time, I can remember being on Greenlays, on ICDC in the 90s, on CCK, now the CA, and I can tell you that there were no women, and there were no women expected to be on that board. Matters have changed. I read that the NSE listed companies now. 26% of NSE listed companies are now, or rather, let me repeat, 26% of directors of NSE listed companies are now the women. The public sector, believe it or not, is doing better. I reckon, and Catherine, I'm ready to be corrected, but between 40 to 50% of directors now, especially in the more prominent public sector entities, are women are composed of women directors, and there are around 30, I believe, female chairs of parastatals. So it's a world that has changed, and it's a world that is changing. How do we get more women there? How do we position you to be on these boards? Well, obviously, first thing is to plug the Women on Board network. It's doing a damn good job, and I think that joining the Women on Board on boards is actually a very advantageous way of giving yourself that extra quality of being able to be considered for boards purely and simply because of WOBN's ability to interact, especially with government, but also with private sector entities. But let's get down to brass tacks. You want to position yourself to be a board member. You want to know how to get on boards. Where do you start? I think the first place you start is with yourself. I've already posed to you a question. Why do you want to join a board? What do you think you will be bringing there? Why do you think people will consider you and not others? What particular skills or outlook to life are you bringing to that board? Those are only questions that you individually can answer, but I will start, I will go on to what I think are self-imposed barriers that stop you from being positioning yourselves on to be considered as members of boards before I go on to give you a more positive account of how to get there. I think when I've talked to women, and the funny thing is that from 2018 onwards, I have had to work very hard to get women to agree for me to put their names forward for consideration to public sector boards. And interestingly enough, the same applies to asking the women to put their names forward for private sector boards. And among these barriers that I have seen are, number one, women can't do it. It requires qualities that only men have. These arguments I have seen posed especially when it comes to what I call the muscular public sector entities, Kenya Pipeline, Kenya Ports, Kenya Power, those which are permanently in the headlines for good or ill, those which are very, very high profile, those which you find tussles between CEOs and boards, those which you find CEOs being dragged in court or board directors being dragged to parliament or being hauled over the coals in other fora. That's a very self-limiting barrier, and it stops you from positioning yourself to be considered to be on a board. The other one that I have come across interestingly is what will other women think. I'm not a woman, but I don't understand I don't understand where this comes from. But I've had it more than once, in fact, far too often, and I don't know why that should be a consideration and become a barrier to one positioning oneself as a potential board member. Then there's this widespread belief that there's a boys' club out there. It decides I'll never be able to break in because these boys meet in whatever dark corners they meet, and they decide whether it's public or private, who will join and who will not join. And finally, it's a belief that even if I join a board, I'll be ignored, I'll be humiliated, decisions are made elsewhere. They expect me to go to bars and clubs to meet and take those decisions that they take in those bars. I am a wife, I'm a mother, I am a respectable woman, I can't be seen in these places. And therefore, there is no point for all these variety of reasons in even thinking of positioning myself as a board member, especially for a public sector company or for a large private sector company. There are, of course, external barriers. I agree. There is active discrimination. I will not say that there are not. There is, in many places, a lack of a talent list, which means that no matter how hard you try, if you don't get onto that magic list, you will never be considered. And that's why I've had a lot of women complaining that companies, especially companies, but also the government tends to recycle the same women onto boards, and I will never join that board because I am not. I'll never be able to join any board because I am not. I'm not known by any of the people who take those decisions. But by and large, I think, in my experience, it's been those self-imposed barriers that have stopped. Certainly, I have tried to get women on boards, and I have come across this particular wall time and time again. So, how to position yourself other than joining the women on boards? I was asked to talk about mentorships, and in fact, that was where I was going to go anyway. We are still at a very early stage as a country. As women, you're trying to break in. If you take your minds back, or rather, if you can visualize, because I don't think you are old enough to do that, if you can visualize Kenya at the dawn of independence, our fathers who got into corporate boards, well, firstly because the foreign companies felt or were being pushed to get Africans onto those boards, but the way they picked on this African as opposed to that African really generally tended to work by you finding a mentor or somebody deciding to mentor you. And the same forces both ways apply today. I really genuinely think that if you do want to position yourself advantageously to join a board, you really should find a mentor. And that's why I mentioned earlier, and Catherine also mentioned in our introduction, that the boys club I mentioned is creating a mentoring program which will help young, not so young women get considered or indeed join boards by having mentors who will give them courage, who will give them hope, who will open those doors to have their names considered by the powers that be, private or public, who you will be able to lean on, who will teach, who will tell you the do's and don'ts, who you can run to in terms of this has happened, what do I do? Certainly in the last year, I have spent a great deal of time giving ear to a lot of lady chairs who have come with questions of one sort or another. I don't necessarily have all the answers, but what I do try and do is to tell them to be brave, so to speak, is to tell them to remember that they are there by virtue of their talent, their achievements, what they've done in life, to remember that they are not there by sufferance, by charity or pity, and to tell them that they are as bright and as good in their jobs as any of the other women can be. It's been tough. I know I know that I did have one chair I could not in the end persuade because the pressures that she came under and the frustrations were too much, and she quit. But all the rest who have been involved in one or another in getting onto boards, especially as chairs, have stayed the course and are starting to look quite effective and to look the part and to look as though they are going to some place, as I'm sure you've seen in the various publications I've seen on the leading directors and chairs and so on, especially in this week of International Women's Day. As I mentor the women, I tell them certain things which are important, which are important more when they're in the boardroom, but are actually quite important in preparing themselves, also quite important in preparing themselves to be considered as board directors. Because don't forget that there's a lot of word of mouth in this. Yes, you may get onto one board, but you will not be able to stay because people will say that you are totally unsuitable. So I try and tell them to adopt these characteristics in themselves, which are quite important in staying on boards, in getting onto boards, in staying on boards. So let me run through this very quickly. What I call in the boardroom, which is number one, don't be a wallflower, speak, you have a voice. Don't be shrill. Don't be shrill even when they call you into those interviews to become a board member, which I know private sector companies are doing a lot more now. They no longer just rely on the old boy network, but they actually do go out and invite people to apply to be board directors and then interview you. I've just prepared two ladies in the last 2 months or so to join, who had applied to join the boards of two banks, and one went through, one did not. But these are the things I told them: don't be a wallflower, speak, but don't be shrill. Shrillness actually does grate very badly on men's ears. Don't look for perfection. This is something Catherine knows is a bugbear of mine, that women tend to want to know everything. Therefore, you over-prepare as though you are in an exam. This is not an exam. Be confident. Don't when you get onto the board, don't hide in soft committees. Women want to go and join, HR committee or a welfare committee or any of these things that they have, instead of joining the finance committee or the technical committee or the audit committee. Don't dress provocatively, whether you're applying or you are in boards. Let me tell you, boards don't welcome distractions, and pretty women dressed well are a serious distraction. I know it sounds seriously feminist, but we are in a man's world. If you want to be on these boards, you have to work with such rules. Read your board papers, don't cram them, learn to get the essentials. Remember, as I said earlier, that board meetings aren't on time, and exams. Be on time and be visible. I'm asked a lot by women, do I have to be a man? No, remain the feminine. Don't become a man. You can't be. Don't be cold. But remember, And this is advice whether or not you are in a board or you are angling to join a board, that men are terrified of strong women. So please remember to use your femininity selectively. Don't flaunt it, but don't hide it either. That's a balance. Only know when to be steely and know when to be demure. And then, and this is a well-kept secret. Men are in a board setting, or if they're interviewing you for a board or they're considering you for a board, are always unconsciously competing for your attention. We are men. That's how we think and feel. We can't help it. So know how to deploy subtlety into the things that you do. I realized that that last part of in the boardroom is slightly outside what I had been asked to talk on, but I decided I would, because there is no point in positioning yourself to be in a board if you don't then position yourself to be an active and effective member of that board. And remember, as a last pointer to that section, boards are organisms. They're living, breathing organisms. They have their foibles, they have their mores, they have their habits, they have their politics. So you must really develop a sense of knowing when to deploy elegant knifing, because if you don't know, it probably means that it's you who is being knifed. Know who's the alpha male here or female, who are the real powers here. Know who the real power is, because the real power may not necessarily be in the boardroom, especially when you're dealing with public sector boards. Let me finish by circling back to where I started, which is how to position yourself. I have said join something like WOBN because it's a good shortcut. I've said be brave, but one thing I haven't emphasized is also try and build a profile. A lot, you may think that government, especially government, but also private sector companies are recycling these same faces. Actually, what they are doing is doing what everybody else does, which is to look and say, who is out there? Who has built a profile? Mainstream media, social media activities, whatever. Who's out there and is seen as an authority on this, that, or the other? I know that we have, for example, got quite a few ladies onto public sector boards who have established a name in completely unrelated areas that you may think are soft human interest areas, but precisely because they have a personality that one can relate to, one can see, one can say, I know that person. It's very easy to be able to say, yep, we will have her. She's in, animal welfare or environmentalism or this, that, the other. It's easy enough because that profile has been built. Remember that when the kinds of boards I'm talking about, public sector board or large private sector boards, companies are high profile entities. They want to associate themselves with good people. They want to associate themselves with people who will make them feel that that by coming in, A, they will improve their organizations, and B, that the organization is able to attract the best of the best. I'm not advocating for the self praise and the self profiling that, say, a slay queen has. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that if you position yourself as somebody who is a serious achiever in their field, then you are opening yourself up to being considered to come onto a board which doesn't necessarily have to be in your field. A mistake that a lot of women make when I talk to them is to think that they need to be technically proficient in whatever board that they ought to go for. The answer is no. I have been a board member of a founding board member of CCK, now the Communications Authority. I have been chairman of Wananchi. I'm chairman of CarePay, which runs the MTIBA platform, which is the digital health wallet. I am the most untechnical person you can come across. I am a technophobe. They haven't asked me to be chair because I know anything about how a telephone or a computer work. They have asked me to be chair because I have established that I am able to do certain things very, very well and carry myself well. And that is why they have asked me to be on their board. So please remember, these are not executive roles. And I really cannot stress that enough, because if there is a self-limitation that I did not mention at the beginning, it's this belief that you should know something a lot about what the company knows. No, you have been asked to lead. So you have been asked to know a lot about human behavior, to have integrity, to learn governance, to learn people, to direct people, to oversight people, to set strategies, not to go out and make a laptop. Catherine, I have overrun my time. I will stop there, ask for questions.
Wow, wonderful, John. Thank you so much. Only as John would say it. And I can see lots of questions coming in, John. This one of dressing really has elicited some reactions. But let me just ask one question that Anne Kimari has asked before I ask if there's anybody who wants to verbalize their question. And she says, if you do not know there are agendas being discussed outside of the boardroom, how do you as a woman get yourself involved if you really can't access where they are meeting or have not been invited? John, perhaps you can speak to that.
Yes, there is a misnomer. Mm-hmm. Whether or not an agenda is being discussed outside the office, outside the boardroom, ultimately, that item will have to be tabled at a board in one form, shape, or another. Therefore, you always, as a board member, have that opportunity to say no, to say, I don't understand, to say, where is this item coming from? To say, I would like to hear more, either from the board or from the management members who are the originators or executors of this. If you do not speak, and I was very clear at the start when I said speak, if you do not ask, you will be left out. If you're afraid of being seen as a nuisance, if you're afraid of being seen as an outlier, if you're afraid of being seen as a contrarian, then of course you will be run over and the agendas will go on. As I told one of your gatherings a couple of years ago, power doesn't have to be exercised at the members' clubs, at the boys' clubs, or whatever. Power is exercised because people believe they need you. They need your consent or your authority. So I would respond to Anne and say, ask. If you feel that something is being railroaded, ask. And if it is still being railroaded, insist on your objection being recorded. boards are terrified of dissenting opinions, because if things go wrong, then the questions will be asked, how come that board member saw this trap at that time and you did not, or did you see the trap and were you a beneficiary of the trap? I said earlier that boards are living organisms, and living organisms do not like contrarian. They will go a long way to accommodate you in order to get you to go with the flow.
Thank you, John. Since this is a mentoring session, is there anyone who would like to verbalize their question themselves? And please make it short and sweet and to the point so that we can get as much as we can out of the session, spread it out over more people. So anyone who would like to directly ask their questions, please just unmute yourself and ask the question. As you prepare to do
Catherine.
that, yes, please go ahead, Carol.
All right. I wanted to ask about the board profile, and just to get John's opinion around whether building your board profile has to include publicity, because he was mentioning just position yourself on social media and in the press. What if that is either not your style or you've not had that opportunity? Does that then limit your opportunities?
No, it doesn't. You then need to decide your own platform to use a pretty sexist analogy. When at least from a man's point of view, when a girl makes up her mind to get a boy, she will do so and will find any which way. I think that that's exactly what I use media as an example of creating your profile, but actually most of the ladies today have never appeared in any media, but they have seen around, they have asked around, they have asked Catherine and people like Catherine, who do I talk to? Who can I go to? Who will do this? And they have then built their profile towards those people, either individuals or groups, known what it is that they want, and ensure that they are seen as people who will bring a value add. And that can be done in all manner of fora, in corporate forums, in groups like KEPSA, where I've seen more than once that those ladies who appear to have a real value add in the discussions that take place on the WhatsApp platform inevitably end up being considered or being invited to join this or that board. So choose your platform, but package yourself.
Thank you, John. Monique, would you like to ask your question, please?
Thank you, John, and thank you, Catherine. For me, one of the questions is, I hear boards can be very political. So if one is not good at playing politics, first and foremost, is it true? And second, if it's true, if one is not good at playing politics, can they be a good board member? That's my question. Thank you.
I think that there is a misunderstanding of the word politics. When you join a chama, that chama also has its politics. They are called dynamics. So maybe it's better to change the word from board politics to board dynamics. Any gathering of human beings will have ever-present and ever-changing dynamics. So when you use the word politics, I think our minds tend to gravitate automatically to the national type, the national politics or the politics that we see in the public space. No, I was actually talking about board dynamics. And if you can't play those board dynamics in a leadership position, or you can't understand them and be able to manage them or overcome them, then you really should not be there. So let me be crisper, understand board dynamics and be able to deal with them either passively or actively.
Great, thank you very much. Irene Kimasha, you have your hand up. Would you like to ask your question?
Yes, Catherine, thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you, John, for the great insight. My question is around power. John said that power could be in the room or outside the room. In the room, mentioned the alpha male or the alpha female. How do you look out? Because power can also be deceiving. It's not necessarily the most outspoken person or the most controversial person. It could be the most silent person. So how do you look out and establish that this is where the power lies? What are some of the things that you can look out for? Thank you.
Well, first of all, in any boardroom, please leave your telephone out. Please leave your handbag out or whatever, because if there's one way of determining who is calling the shots here is by paying attention, not only the non-verbal signs, but by listening and seeing and trying to see a pattern. What resolutions are coming? What resolutions are passing? Who is driving these resolutions? Which will give you an indication of who has met before the board meeting, what have they whispered, who sits beside who all the time. Do they come up with similar proposals? Is there a pattern of proposer and seconder? Is there a pattern of a good cop, bad cop? In other words, have your full attention in the boardroom. Yes, of course, you can use your wiles to find out outside the boardroom what is happening, but a boardroom is a fascinating place. You can read a lot and see a lot if you decide to pay attention and to put your phone away and to leave the phones to those who are confident enough to know that no matter what they say, people will pay attention to them. If you do want to learn board dynamics, you do need to be wholly in that boardroom, the mind and soul and eyes.
Fantastic. Be present. Eva, you want to ask your question?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Catherine, and hi, John. My question ties to the branding and positioning. That's the theme of the day. Now, I have applied to certain boards where the feedback has come that I am young. So which left me confused because they shortlisted me enough to interview me. This was a corporate, and then they decided I was young. So as relates to branding and positioning, I don't know how much what I can do about my age at this point, but I'd be keen to hear John's takes on that. And then the second one was we hear a bit about getting sponsors or someone who can hold your hand once you're on board. So I would keen to hear about John's perspective of how to identify that person. Sometimes you are new and you do not understand the relationships that go on the board. How do you pick that, essentially a mentor, but also a sponsor who can help you to voice your concerns once on the board? Thanks.
Okay, those two questions are actually related. One, you are young. You are not the only one. It's becoming quite an issue that boards talk the talk of bringing in young, fresh blood to bring in a digital knowledge or knowledge about the millennials and others, but actually putting that talk into practice is not really apparent. And the lady I told you who was unsuccessful in joining this particular a global company board was adversely impacted by being young. I would say that being young also means that, when you're young, you're also cocky. And I would say that it is time to draw back on the cockiness and say that I need somebody to help me. If I'm going to apply to this board or that board, I need, before I do any such thing, to go and speak to those who perhaps have access to those people who can then give a case for me before the board members set eyes on me, who can paint a picture, which is why I say that these two questions are related. I know your question on sponsors was more on when you're already in the boardroom, but really it is important also to identify those sponsors when you are out of, when you are not yet in the boardroom, who will give you pointers and who will, like a marriage broker, go and give a case or your case to the powers that be before they ever know who you are. In terms of how do I identify sponsors in a boardroom, that's a valid question in the public sector. As I told another gathering, in the public sector, generally, the first time you meet your fellow board members is when you meet for the first time. So it is not easy to know how you or they got onto the board. Many people actually don't know how the others got onto the board, and even in some cases, they don't know how they got onto the board. In private companies, that is not so much the case. Even where you've had to apply and there will be somebody, and you will be pretty quickly able to see who on this board is welcoming you. By and large, interestingly, it's usually the chairman or chairperson, because the chairman is the one person who will not necessarily be threatened by you. The chairperson is always looking to balance interests. And if I see a newcomer on the board, I would like to make sure that that newcomer becomes aligned to what I want. But if you're joining a public sector board, you will just have to be smart and, to use Catherine's words, be in the room in the moment and try and discern who is on your side and who is not.
Awesome. Thank you, John. Yvonne, perhaps you'd like to ask your question, and then after Yvonne, Lena can ask her question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Catherine, and thank you, John, for the insightful session. For me, I think my question is, you've mentioned that boards can be very political, especially in the public sector. And do you also think that this also applies in the private sector? I tend to imagine, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, that even for one to get into a private sector board, they need to be sort of to be in a boys club or in a certain network forum where somebody can come and whisper to you that there's this position and I think you'd make a good fit. I think that is more, I don't know whether there's politics in that, and that somebody approaching you and telling you that, and it's only like this information is just for a certain small group. And if you're not in that network, then you sort of miss out, especially if you're interested into being in a board. What's your take on that?
When I started out, I said that there were self-imposed barriers that women have, and one of the ones that I pointed out is exactly the ones that the one that you have pointed out. One, the word politics is, as I said earlier, much misunderstood. Yes, public sector boards will have a reflection of national politics. Private sector boards will have a reflection of narrower politics, narrower dynamics. They will be there. But that question, which I want to answer of, I won't get in because I am not a member of that club, is simply not true. And I want to answer it with a left field response. I'm I am the vice chairman of, I'm a vice chairman at Muthaiga Country Club. Now I know that it is seen as the snootiest and most difficult club to enter in Kenya. But people enter. People apply. What do? They look around, they ask their friends, or they call the club, or they do other means and find out who are the members of this club. And do I know these members, and are these members prepared to act as my sponsor? Because that's exactly what we call my proposer and my seconder. In the same way, if you have set your minds that you want to be on a particular board, you do not have to belong to a club. You have to find out who belongs to that particular club, that particular board. Do you know them, or do you know their friends? And worm your way into finding out whether indeed there is a position, or more importantly, worm your way into people saying, okay, this girl is a bloody nuisance. Who is she? Why does she want to come in? Can I see her? Is she as good as she claims she claims she is? In short, you've got to be pushy. You've got to push your way in there. You've got to find a route to getting in there. For heaven's sake, you want to be a board member. A board is a leadership body. If you want to be a leader, you've got to be resourceful. And part of that resourcefulness lies in saying, I want to be a board director at Safaricom. So who runs Safaricom? How are the board selected? Who's selecting the board? Who do they represent? Who do I know there? How do I do this? What do they want? What kind of board members have they known in the past? How can I get close to a board member there, or to one of the people who make the decisions as to who will be board members, and so on and so on and so forth. So I disagree. I think that resourcefulness, which actually is a bloody good quality to have in a board member, will make you find a way to knowing where the power lies, how to worm your way. You may not make your way there, not at the first try. You may try 2, 3, 4, 5 times, but you will definitely have your name at the races. And as we used to say as young men, you will not be able to take the girl home if you aren't invited to the party. You must learn to self-invite, or to find people who will invite you to that boys' club, that party. It is possible, it is done.
Get to the party. Lena, you can ask your question, followed by Caroline Mukidi, and then last but not least, Damaris Gitonga.
Thank you, Catherine. Good evening, John. So at the risk of sounding fearful of public sector boards, you mentioned your comment earlier on instances where public sector boards are sometimes taken to court. My question is, can board members be held personally liable for decisions in certain instances made at the board? Thank you.
Actually, Catherine would probably answer you that better than I can, but I can tell you that having been in front of Parliament more times than I care to remember, having written statements at the DCI and at EACC, having been a witness in High Court, again, all more times than I care to say, I wouldn't use the word accountable, not in the sense of that word is used for when referring to chief executives when they have been accused of an economic crime, but certainly you will be held responsible, which is why I said earlier, read your minutes, read your board papers, read and read again before you put pen to paper. I think it's, and there are instances where you can be accountable. I think it's, when was it, two days ago, I read in the media of a board, was she a board member or a chair of a technical committee at the National Land Commission, she was like a commissioner, I think, who approved payment of monies to for land which apparently was already owned by Kenya Railways for the SGR. So yes, I can see that there are instances where boards will make decisions which are detrimental or which are outside their purview. When I always keep by my side the State Corporations Act, Mwongozo, and various other statutes, and I am not shy of saying, in a board meeting, there are some words which are very important. There's a key difference between approved, noted, recommended, and so on and so forth in the decisions that are made. So yes, it's rare that you are held accountable, but you will be held responsible, and therefore you need to make absolutely certain that whatever it is that is being minuted, documented in your name is something that you are comfortable with.
Thank you, John. Caroline? Caroline Mukidi or Damaris, please ask your question.
Good evening. My name is Damaris.
Oh.
All right, Caroline, go ahead.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. And thank you, John, for this extremely insightful session. I'm Caroline Mukidi Wandera. I've been living in Kampala, Uganda.
You've disappeared.
Caroline, you've disappeared. Can we have Damaris as perhaps you try and join in again?
I'm working professionally in my field for over 20 about Kenyan.
Yeah, okay, try.
So my question was about Kenyans in diaspora and how are they considered as contributors to institutions and firms in Kenya as board members and as effective board members? Or are Kenyan boards being constituted only of Nairobi or Kenya physically present candidates? I feel I have been and I am ready for board and can even identify a mentor. However, do Kenyans living in Kenya obtain priority status? Catherine, you're laughing.
Couple of points to that. Kenyans living in Kenya will always have the advantage because they're here. And they are seen at school, at church, at mosque, at clubs, at restaurants, at whatever, they're here. So that advantage you will never be able to put away. But think again of, take the Standard newspaper. The chair and a couple of directors of that the listed companies live offshore. Yes, they are not Kenyans, they are foreigners, but distance is not necessarily a reason for an individual not to be on the board. And I know, for example, that the chair of the mineral rights board is a resident of Australia, but he is able to be an effective chair. There is no question that being away is a major disadvantage, but it's not an insoluble handicap. You can be out of Kenya and you can be considered, but again, the same things I had said earlier, you need a route to being considered. Where do you live? And in your case, what will you be able to do even though you are out there? Can you be effective? There is no reason why you cannot live outside of Kenya and still be an effective chairman. Catherine and I are on the board of Kenya Airways. The chairman of Kenya Airways is Michael Joseph, and he spends most of his time outside of Kenya. It's possible. It's not impossible. So the diaspora is not disqualified. I dare say the diaspora is not organized as a diaspora. So if you are able in your own right to find that person who will hold your hand and guide you to where opportunities exist, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, John, for the
Damaris.
encouragement. Thank you.
Thank you, Damaris. And then I will call on Marion Mwangi after Damaris, just to share her experience being the CEO of BOC. Damaris?
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you, John, for the good presentation. I think my question has partly been touched on by John when he was talking about going to DCI and stuff like that. Before that, he also talked about a board member who could not handle pressure. So bearing in mind the profile of the requirements of some of these positions, and there'll be pressure, what would you advise a board member who finds themselves in a sort of conflicted board and they still want to be the voice to be heard, but at the same time ensuring that they do not find themselves at the DCI because they participated in a decision that they should otherwise have declined?
Always remember that you are there. You are a member of a collective, but you have been selected as an individual. You have as much fiduciary responsibility as somebody else in another capacity, say a trustee in a pension fund board. It is you. It is you to look at. It is you to decide that you are willing to stand out and say, no, this will not pass. I am speaking from painful memory because there is a board I was on and I had voiced my concerns, and I wish I had voiced them even more and had them recorded. I did have them recorded in some instances, but not as much as I should have. And in the end, everything went wrong at the company. You have a fiduciary responsibility, even if there is no criminal liability. You do want to be able to sleep happily knowing that you made the right decisions. At the same time, you also have to have a sense of judgment. If you're discussing a major issue, do we relocate a plant and fire all these people? That's a key decision. If we are discussing, do we build a shed for bicycles or a shed for this or the other, there are things you should learn to say, look, the earth won't, the sun won't stop shining and the earth won't stop rotating. This is not a fundamental decision warranting my standing up and declaring my independence. Winston Churchill had a famous saying where he said, always decide what issues are important enough to warrant your opposing to the point of resigning. Because resigning remains an option, by the way, if the issue at hand is such that you feel that strongly. So there is an element of give and take. You are living in a human community, and while there are things you would not have done the way they have been done, you really do need to learn to determine what is critical, what is fundamental, and what is, look, it's 6 of one and half a dozen of the other.
Thank you so much, John. Marion, you are the managing director of BOC Kenya. You sit on a number of you sit on the board of BAT and a number of other boards. You've heard John speak this evening. What's your reaction to some of the things that John has said to us today?
Thanks, Catherine. I'm really happy to have joined Wobin this year. It was long coming. Thank you for this opportunity as well. John really made my day today when he talked about Shriya, and I think I wanted to just laugh because not many of us understand what Shriya is until you hear it in the boardroom. So I agree with going in there as a woman with good insights and thoroughness. And I really, really agree that you should read board papers. I mean, as an MD, I've got board papers that are read for my board, but as a board member, I read the board papers thoroughly, because I'd like to make sure that the content and the value that I bring is going to be visible. And you know, I also quite like the don't be a fly on the wall, and make sure that there's nothing big that's being decided when you haven't put your voice. So I think it's quite a good forum, and I just want to add some encouragement to the ladies on the call that I don't belong to a boys club, and I don't have a club that I go to and say, look, I'm available. But what I did after the Strathmore training was to deliberately approach a chairman of boards and say, I would like to be a board member. So the discussion is directly to the person who would know when a position opens. And people like being asked. Actually, I think we don't ask enough. They like being asked that I've got this value. I'm a Kaizen expert, and I've run a business for a long time. I'm a turnaround CEO, and I'm looking for the opportunity to serve on a board. And I want to serve because I've got value, and I've got a very keen eye on governance. And as I serve, I know that I will increase my capacity, so that in the future I will chair a board. So I think people like John and other board chairmen will be actually quite willing to support somebody who is supporting themselves. I mean, there's even a saying we have: if you're really supporting yourself towards that goal, you get supported. And therefore, being on these boards was not because I was a member of Boys Club, but because I asked. I've got 6 or 7 people that I will tell this is what I'm thinking about, and I'm available for this sort of board service. If you hear of anything, let me know, and then they will help you. And it's been great serving and going in with a mentality of serving and being part of a company that is well run, that doesn't create problems is good. Actually, my reaction today is, would I really sit on a public sector board and have the courage that I see John has? I don't know if I'm ready, and maybe I'll be calling John for mentorship in that field. I mean, our chair lady at BAT, Rita, has had quite a good experience with John and the committee that they have, and maybe I will think that I can be a politically exposed person, which is what you become when you serve on a public board. I hope that helps, Catherine. I wasn't prepared to talk, but I really like what John has said.
Thank you very much, Marion, for sharing your experience. Now, I'd like to ask Millicent Omukaga. First and foremost, congratulations on your recognition by the First Lady for empowering women. You have served on public sector boards. What is your experience?
Thanks, Madam Catherine. I was not also ready to talk, but since you asked, I will make it very brief. And also thank you for your leadership, really. We can feel you, and keep it up. You also, as a leader, many times we don't celebrate you, but you are a woman worth celebrating. Thank you very much. There was a question raised earlier before I respond to yours about non-Kenyans sitting on boards, and John has tried to respond to it very well. I had one small insight to also say, it just depends on which avenue, because if the shareholder is, for example, in the Netherlands, and the subsidiary or the company is in Tanzania, when you are the one representing, so you don't have to be a Tanzanian. If it's Kenyan, you will be in the board, but you stay in the Netherlands. So you attend the board meetings, attend to board matters, and you remain in your residence. I have served in financial institutions boards in Africa, including Ghana, and I was based in Nairobi. So it was not an issue. When I needed to be present on the ground, it was agreed. When I could join virtually, but I contributed immensely, even as a chair of one of the key committees. So my public sector board experience has not been easy. So when somebody, it's good to long to serve in these boards, but it's really a lot of work because a lot of, as John has said, a lot of members in public sector boards are representing some interests. So I always find myself as an independent member, and that's why I'm put to chair a committee like finance and investment or audit and risk. And being independent means that I have to be really independent and objective and get things moving. And sometimes the other members are not quite keen on things going right, because as long as they are sitting in the board, maybe they are representing employees or certain quarters. So for me, I can say it's good to desire to serve in a public sector board, but it's really work. If you're technical, if you're professional, you know the right things that should be done and how right they should be done. So many times you will be agonizing, reading the papers thoroughly, researching and looking at the relevant laws and supporting regulations to make your point. And it's not every board member that is going to do that. So it's important that you decide whether that's what you want to do. If you're employed and you possibly are an executive in another busy company, you must then spare your nights, work in the day and spare the nights to research a lot about the board issues, reading the papers and preparing. Where travel is involved, public sector boards really enjoy travel in my view. So there will just be something to take us to Mombasa. And that's also the day you have your own board meeting. So it's nice to long for it, but it's really tasking, I must say. And so for the ladies, if God allows you, it's just be prepared that it's really a lot of work because you will be going there to deliver. You are not going to sit there because you are politically correct. Most of us women sit in boards, not because we were in the political ground standing well, no, because we have something to deliver. Just that the encouragement I wanted to give. I like John's insight very much. When we go in, let's deliver. Because it's a name we are building. It will open another door to another even more serious board or to something else. In any case, we are serving our country. So let's do it. Let's open up. Let's avail ourselves. And when we go in, let's do the job. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Millicent and Marion. Great insights indeed. We are coming to the end of this session. And I'll be inviting John to make his closing remarks. I know we've taken a lot out of him this evening. But John, as you make your closing remarks, and just thinking about the International Women's Day, I choose to challenge. I choose to challenge. What do you choose to challenge, John, as you make your closing remarks?
Gosh, Catherine, talk about a question. I have no idea what I choose to challenge. I thought I challenged everything when I persuaded the powers that be to appoint lady chairs of a couple of very muscular parastatals. I would have to think about that. I have a feeling I have talked enough. There isn't really much for me to wrap up. I enjoy these sessions. I enjoy encouraging the women to join. I get frustrated by the self-limitations. That is why I dwelt a lot on them. I think that our women have a lot to contribute. If you go to South Africa, for instance, you'll find that a lot of corporates are looking more and more to Black women than to Black men as they strive to bring in the Black community into corporate life. So I think the opportunities are here too, if you grasp them. I hear the concerns about public sector. It is not a pretty place to be in, but if we don't sort it out, and if you women don't help us sort it out, then don't blame the country if things in certain parastatals and certain sectors do not go well. I am very proud that my successor at Kenya Pipeline, Rita Okuthe has continued to turning the company into a normal company with considerable returns to the shareholder. I'm happy about that. I look at Vivian Yida, who is grappling with the massive task of turning around Kenya Power and Lighting. She did the same for East African Development Bank, so we all have confidence that she will do the same there. I look at with pride at Jane Karuku, whose COVID-19 committee, despite receiving, large sums of money, not a peep has been heard about money being misappropriated, and she had some pretty large, very large, indeed oversized egos to deal with in the shape of the various people who are on that committee of hers, and she managed it well. I think the opportunities are there. My closing words: stop self-limitation, whether it is in the public or private sector spaces. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. Awesome conversations, awesome insights. We cannot get enough of you, John, and that's why we keep harassing you, as you say. Ladies, I am sure you have enjoyed the session, and allow me just 2 or so minutes to speak about some of the programs that we are looking at as women on boards. And the first one really is the one that John mentioned, the mentorship program. And part of the mentorship program of women on boards will be run by the boys that John talked about, the chairs of state corporation boards. If you're interested in that mentorship program, please do let Hannah know, and we shall link you up with somebody who can mentor you into board leadership, and we'll be giving you more details shortly. We have our anniversary coming up on the 10th of April. And on that day, we will launch the mentorship program, but at the same time, we will be recognizing John as one of the people who has really pushed women on boards ahead, who has really championed women on boards. So we will be recognizing John as a champion for women on boards program. Hannah has shared a number of programs that we are running, including board profiling. If you're interested, please let her know so that we can sign you up for that board profiling session. Some of you have gone through that session, and I'm sure that you found it very, very useful. Do sign up as well for the Global Women on Boards program, which we will be running this year with a number of partners, including Lead Women of Malaysia, Columbia Global Centers, as well as Deloitte. So please do sign up for those programs as well. John, I do want to thank you very, very much for spending your evening, half of your evening with us. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. I want to thank each and every one of you who attended the call this evening, because the session was successful because of your own contributions as well. Thank you so much. And God bless. Have a great evening, and see you soon as we communicate next steps in terms of our own programs. Thank you. Asante sana. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.